This is the book right here, folks. Rave On. Global Adventures in Electronic Dance Music. Detroit has been a mass social experiment. The future of America hit here first. DJ Soul. Detroit Techno Militia. This post-industrial sarcophagus, that's how Detroit writer Charlie LaDuff has described his hometown. A post-industrial sarcophagus. Derek May has his own take. Detroit is like the wreck of the Titanic, but above water, he suggests, as we sit on the roof deck at his Transmat studio on Gratiot Street while dusk draws gently down over the city. The evening air is soft and warm, and the playful chirrup of birdsong can still be heard over the screaming of the police sirens in the streets below. Across the road, the windows of the building opposite May's studio are bricked up. On the ground floor is a shop called Cheap Charlie's, offering second-hand work clothes and dollar items. While at the traffic lights are a couple of billboards, one advertising cut-price deals on McDonald's cheeseburgers, single, double, triple, every day, and another touting easy loans. Get a good car, even with bad credit. The target demographics seem clear. Although the Eastern Market neighborhood was becoming one of the most fashionable in the city, with new boutiques and hipster restaurants springing up along the Techno Boulevard block, these slogans were not aimed at the affluent. We weren't far from the downtown area, where tens of thousands of people had gathered for the biggest techno party of the year, but there were few signs of life outside, and the only people passing by this Friday evening were vagrants. When I first interviewed Derek May in 1988, Detroit had already been drifting downwards in a spiral of economic decline for several decades, but it was still America's seventh largest city with a population of around 1 million. Seventh City Techno was actually the headline of the first major feature on techno, a genre-defining piece of reportage by Stuart Cosgrove in the British youth culture magazine The Face. 10 years after Motown left for sunnier climes, the Motor City moves to a beat more inspired by Henry Ford's factories than Berry Gordy's dream, its introduction promised. Techno is the sound of young Detroit, built with machines and driven by despair. In the article, May gave Cosgrove his all-time classic quote, describing techno as a sound that was like Kraftwerk and George Clinton stuck in an elevator with only a sequencer to keep them company. Some 25 years on, Detroit was no longer America's seventh city and had not been for a long time. It had dropped below 20th place in the U.S. rankings, and its population was down to under 700,000. Back to what it had been around the beginning of the automobile boom in the early 20th century. Numbers had fallen by an incredible 25% between 2000 and 2010, nothing less than a mass exodus, leaving more than 80,000 buildings abandoned. 80,000 buildings. Wow. Little wonder that the effects of this desertion could be seen on the streets with their eerie feeling of absence, as if some plague or conflict had decimated the human stock. Urban blight had created a bizarre landscape in which prosperous enclaves of bourgeois tranquility nestled up against derelict blocks where forlorn stumps of burnt-out homes poked out from abandoned land and rotting hulks of shuttered factories loomed over deserted lots. Detroit feels like ground zero for what exactly? Asked author Mark Benelli in his book about his hometown. The end of the American way of life or the beginning of something else? Detroit was eventually declared bankrupt in 2013, the largest ever municipal bankruptcy in U.S. history. As the title of an underground resistance track released around the same time asked, has God left the city? The talk at Transmat that evening was about the latest population figures and about how Detroit's chief of police, James Craig, Carl Craig's cousin, had just been featured in the National Rifle Association magazine, urging the city's crime-haunted residents to arm themselves. People find it hard to believe that I'm still living here. They ask, why are you still in Detroit? May remarked. But I'm happy. I have everything I want, and I can get on a plane and go wherever I want, so why do I need to leave? And a strange thing had happened after the turn of the millennium. After being immortalized in all its decaying splendor by photographers like Camilo Jose Vergara, Sofia Vergara, and websites like The Fabulous Ruins of Detroit, the haggard cityscape had become something of a tourist attraction for aficionados of what had become known as ruin porn. Visitors are coming to see a city that looks like a disaster movie set. They're coming here to tour the ruins that we are still living in, said Derek May. Detroit was where the tidal wave of 20th century automotive capitalism washed up onto the shore and then receded, leaving the detritus of an urban settlement that could sometimes look as if it had been ravaged by a tsunami. Inevitably, this contributed to techno's mystique, to the kind of twisted romanticism that entranced its European devotees. There's this European Blade Runner fantasy about Detroit, this beautiful music rising from the concrete ruins, says Alan Oldham. A music full of reveries of escape into the cosmos or under the sea, of apocalyptic visions of a world in which eternal darkness has fallen, of angry blasts of noise to soundtrack riots and rebellions against a brutal oppressor. Underground Resistance, that's the OG group. Derek May, shouts to Detroit. One of the birthplaces of sweet, sweet techno. Remember that first quote. Detroit has been a mass social experiment. The future of America hit here first. That's what Cornel West said. America is a failed state. We'll see. Keep it herbal, legalize it. One love. Down with corporate greed, down with private prisons. They're the workers. Medicare for all that good stuff. Help our homeless homies.